If you don't fear being rejected, you're unstoppable. Or if you no longer fear like looking stupid, looking dumb, making a mistake, like your self-expression, your visibility, and therefore your magnetism, because you're so out there in your essence, in your truest expression, is going to expand so massively.
Some say you have to choose between being the perfect professional woman or being the bad girl. But we're here to tell you, you can be both. I'm Rachna Patel.
And I'm Ebony Lukovitz. And this is A Bad Girl's Guide to Business, a podcast for bad bitches who want to create lives they love and incredible businesses.
Hey, baddies. And we are back for our 5th episode. I cannot believe it. And we are joined today with Emily Todd.
Welcome, Emily.
Yes, we are so excited.
I am so stoked to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, just a very quick high-level intro, and then I'll share how we met as well.
Oh, I would love our intro story.
Yeah.
So my name is Emily Todd. I'm a business coach to heart-led service providers. I work primarily with coaches, healers, Akashic Records readers, astrologists, hypnotherapists, anyone who has a gift, magic to bring to the world. I love to support them to unfuck their marketing, as I like to say, and translate the bigness of their magic and their gifts into language, into marketing that the world can understand. Because often these star seeds, they're so gifted, they're so talented, but when it comes to that 3D human skill of marketing, it can be a little challenging to describe what they do. So I love my work. Before doing this, I was in corporate, which I'm sure we'll get into for about 15 years. So here we are.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that high-level intro. I've always been inspired and in awe of what you do. So let's just take our listeners back to when we actually met, which I think was maybe a couple of years ago now, which feels like it was much longer. It feels like I've known you for much, much longer, but we were at our friend's birthday and we were having amazing food and wine. And one of our mutual girlfriends was like, hey, listen, I really, really think you're going to love Emily and her sister. You know, they're coming to my birthday. They're also launching their own business. This is just when I had launched Sakari Consulting. And I literally have pictures from that night. We have a little girls group from it. We have stickers made from our little pictures and we drank wine.
I almost forgot the stickers.
Yeah. So we had a lot of fun and this was in Mexico City. So, if you baddies remember from the last episode, I let you guys know that I'm in Mexico City and Emily spent some time here. And anytime she's in town, we talk business, good old baddie stuff. And we always get lunch and drink wine together. So I'm really honored to have you on board today.
I am so honored to be here. I told you this, but this is literally the best podcast name I have ever heard in my entire life. I was like, why did I think of that? It's so good.
It's so funny. Thank you so much. Yeah, Ebony and I were sitting there with our podcast producer, throwing names into an Excel spreadsheet, and then we finally came up with this. It felt an alignment, right?
Yes, it did. It did. And we're all bad bitches who love to make money and have fun while we do it. So, Emily, so grateful to have you on as our very first guest and really excited to get into your journey. And I know that you have a lot to share about the entrepreneurial path. And I know you support a lot of women on this path as well. So super, super excited to dive deep with you. Rach, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. I mean, something that I realized, and this is something I realized very recently as we were getting into prepping for the interview and researching, because, first and foremost, you're a dear friend of mine, right? And I've always followed you on Instagram and we always cheerlead each other. But, when I looked at your website, I saw that your website is called Honor Your Wild, which I love. That really resonated with the theme of the podcast and the name, because, we are baddies that live our life on our own terms. And that includes being a little bit wild at times. So, I mean, can you tell me of some times of how you've honored your wild? I'm sure there's so many, but give us your top 3.
Well, I love that you pointed out my website name because that was what I named my coaching business when I first started. Because I came out of the gate after graduating and my coaching certification, had no idea what I was coaching on, like was not niched. But I was like, I want to help women feel more aliveness, unleash their wild, honor their wild. So that's how that name was born. I very quickly figured out honoring your wild was not a niche. And so and pivoted. But for me, honoring your wild really means honoring that wild woman within you and your dreams and your desires. And I had been in the corporate world, climbing that 9 to 5 ladder for about 15 years. Had a lot of success very early on, very young. From the outside, oh, Emily's life is so good. She's made it managing a large team. Oh my God, New York. Woo, it's so fabulous. But on the inside, my soul was dying. And I felt like my essence, my aliveness was dying. The more I tried to squish myself and smash, I know you can resonate with that, into this box of what being a successful woman was. And I realized I had just been checking boxes my whole life. And in retrospect, big surprise, to try and make my dad proud in many ways. Like, look, Dad, I got the promotion. I got the salary, and realized I was really not living a life on my terms. So resigned from my big 9 to 5 career and honored my wild in that I launched the business that had been on my heart for almost probably a decade. I'd wanted to launch my own business.
Wow.
So for me, honoring your wild, and what I really support women to do is honor that dream, that gift, that God-sourced universe placed on your heart to bring forth in this lifetime.
I think that's beautiful. And I'm so glad that you did what you needed to do to take that leap of faith and start up the business. And I know that you're helping women, hundreds of women. I know that you had a real successful 3-month class that you did for people. Sorry, I don't know the exact terminology, but
a mastermind.
A mastermind. Yes. Wonderful.
My boyfriend's always like, wait, is it a master class? Is it a mastermind? Is it a program? I'm always telling him the terms.
I get it.
I love it.
I completely get it.
So I would love to hear a little bit more about your upbringing, Emily, and how it influenced you to where you got today. So tell us a little bit more about Emily's origin story.
Yes. So I am the firstborn of 4. There are 4 Todd siblings, and I'm the oldest. So I grew up very much like in my hyperachiever, like in all the honors classes, getting all the straight A's. And really just proving how much can I achieve, really finding my self-worth in my achievements and my output. Which was great, got me a lot of success very young, but something that I really remember growing up is watching my dad. And my dad is an entrepreneur and I think had 3 successful businesses that he built from scratch and sold. And I remember as a kid watching my dad in his study, late at night or on weekends, and he was seemed so exciting. He was building this dream, and I knew there was a lot of uncertainty, and I knew it was scary, but I always saw the outcome of it, this like massive success, this massive fulfillment, this joy, this aliveness, this sense of accomplishment. And I was like, I want to do that. But of course, it's like my dad's like, be responsible, go get a degree. And I ended up studying marketing, and, entrepreneurship is scary. It's, unstable. You never know. It could fail. But I just saw my dad in that. And I was like, that seems so cool. And so the first part of my career, I worked in marketing at agencies, like very established agencies. And then I reached a point where I was like, this is starting to get boring working for big brands, like big Fortune 500 brands, where there's so many rules. And to get like any marketing idea approved, it takes like 6 months. So I actually left this big agency I was at and went to a startup that had just raised all this money in VC funding because I wanted a piece of that like excitement of building something. And I was one of the first team members. When I started, I think there was like less than 10 employees. And by the time I left, we were over 200. And so I got that
Wow.
feeling again of building something from ground zero. And like I had that feeling, I'd seen my dad, like I was up late in the office and building and blood, sweat, tears, seeing the outcome, feeling like the underdog, feeling like it wasn't going to work. And there's just, I've always loved that energy of startup culture, of entrepreneurship, of weaving a dream into reality. And, I had done that for my CEO at that startup. And then when I decided to start my own company, I was like, you know what? I want to weave my own goddamn dream into reality now. So that's,
Yeah, you
that's how I
did.
got into
That's
this world.
That's so great. That is so, so great. Wonderful. Well, before going into marketing, I know you were a model. So what made you go from model to marketer? Tell us about that.
No one has ever asked me that question. I love that question. Well, the reality is I was a terrible model because I wouldn't shut the fuck up. So every time I was on a photo shoot, they were always like, you have to stop talking so we can take your picture. And I was very bored by it. It was a great experience because growing up, I don't know if you'll believe this, but I was very shy, like stuttering,
I
turning
find
bright
that
red.
very hard to believe.
I remember you telling me the story when we went out for lunch. Yeah.
Yeah. So, turning bright red when the teacher would call on me, all of that, like blacking out when I had to present in front of the class at school. So modeling was great for me in that, like, it got me out of my shell, like really fast. And things like, you go to castings, you talk to a lot of people. So I loved it for that. But ultimately I was like, well, this is not it. I'm not allowed to talk, or like no one wants to hear what I have to say. It was an expansive experience at 17 to be able to like get on an airplane and like fly to London or fly to Sri Lanka. But I got bored very quickly. And the photographers were always telling my agency, she needs to stop talking so much. So now for my career, I get to talk all the time. So I'm right at home.
Yes. And that's actually what I said in I think maybe it was in episode 2, like where my mum said, she was like, you're not going to make money just being a good talker. And I was like, oh, well, would you
Watch
look at
me.
that? Look at me do just that, right? And so that's amazing. But I think what's really nice and what's really important that you just kind of highlighted there is, you can find your confidence from the most kind of obscure things like, hey, I went out there, I tried to be a model, I got out of my comfort zone and I exposed myself to different things. I was out traveling the world when I was 17, going to London, going to Sri Lanka. And I think that's beautiful because that allowed you to really build that inner confidence. And I'm sure kind of has taken you to where you are now. So I think that's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, my journey with confidence in myself and quote unquote public speaking has been a very long and windy road. And when I started my coaching business, I was really confronted with that fear of being seen, that fear of public speaking, that fear of judgment, that fear of looking stupid on a really massive scale. Because to build a business like I have now, being seen is a big part of it. Being on podcasts like this is a big part of it. Running your own master classes and masterminds and group programs is a big part of it. And when I first started my business, I was like, I don't want to be on podcasts. Like 3-4 years ago, you couldn't pay me to be on a podcast. There's no way I would do it because I was
look at you now.
Right?
Here I am, baby. But it's
yeah. I find that crazy to actually believe, but I mean, knowing you, I understand that. So for the baddies out there, you went from really, really shy kid, like red when a teacher would ask you questions, blacking out, when, you'd have to get up and present. And now look at you, right? What would be the 3 top tidbits of wisdom you would give like a shy woman out there that really, sees you or sees other baddies out there as an inspiration?
and you know what? It's just fear of public speaking. I always see statistically is one of the greatest fears so many of us have, especially as women. And I think the first thing I would say is really get clear on what your actual fear is. What is beneath that, right? And this is where the kind of shadow work and the inner work of entrepreneurship comes in, because you really get to look at, well, what do I actually fear will happen? Like, what is the actual worst case scenario if I were to get on a podcast or do an Instagram live or host a masterclass? Like, what am I really afraid of happening? And for me, I asked myself that question when I was trying to overcome that fear in my business. Because even in my 9 to 5 days, I was presenting all the time the more I got promoted, and I was not breaking free from it. I was still like not sleeping the night before. Like, I remember once I flew 14 hours to China to present to our engineering team there. Didn't sleep the whole 14 hours. And I was so nervous about presenting. So it's really like, okay, what's actually going on? What am I afraid of? And what is really that safety pattern that's driving this fear? And for me, it was really no shocker, but like I had this perfectionism thing going on where like if I viewed public speaking as like this big test of like I had to show up perfect. I couldn't say anything wrong, quote unquote wrong, no such thing. And so I would tell my subconscious mind, like, it's this big deal. Everyone's judging you. If you say something that doesn't sound really brilliant, you're going to get in my 9 to 5 days, you're not going to get promoted, or in my business, like I used to believe I'm going to be found out as a failure, or not as a failure, but as a phony, because we have imposter syndrome, right? So it's like really looking at that and being like, okay, I see you. I'm aware of that. I acknowledge that. Cool. I'm really trying to get it right. How beautiful of my subconscious mind to try and protect me. But can I just allow myself to show up and in my mess, in my authenticity, and allow that to be the magic, allow that to be enough, and really move away from this fantasy that perfection exists. And so when I did my first masterclass in my business, where I had like 30 women sign up, I was like, okay, we're just going to do our absolute best. There's no perfection here. It's just, this is step one. However you show up in that moment is going to be perfect and beautiful. And we're going to learn, and it's going to get better next time.
I love that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I really relate to that as well, Emily. I think it could be an eldest daughter thing. When I was at Burning Man last year, I went to a eldest daughter ceremony with a girlfriend and about 50 other women, and it was really the burden that eldest daughters have is quite profound. They need to be perfectionists. They need to show up perfectly, to be an overachiever. So I really relate to that, and the willingness to be seen and just showing up online is something that I've really had to work through over the last couple of months and push through that. So I love that a lot of the work that you do is talking about this shadow side of entrepreneurship. And, let's just continue diving in on this, because I think, I would really love to hear, and I'm sure our listeners would as well, what are the common types of shadows that you are helping female founders and entrepreneurs work through? And what does that process look like if someone thinks that they're experiencing, a real kind of battle with their shadow side?
Yeah. I love this topic so much because to me, entrepreneurship is the absolute greatest form of shadow work that exists. I think entrepreneurship is designed to bring up your greatest fears, doubts, wounds, and insecurities. Because it is, when you think about the nature of it, it is actually insane. It goes against all of our human hardwiring. It goes against our reptilian brain, which really just craves the routine, the safe, the familiar, comfort, predictability, routine. Entrepreneurship is the complete opposite of that. And so I always say that if you are an entrepreneur, you are a special kind of crazy person, because it takes a special kind of crazy person, a bad bitch, to want to do this. Because that's why we stick in our 9 to 5s, right? Because even though we're miserable, our souls are dying. Hey, it's comfortable. Hey, I'm getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. And so some of the biggest, because when you look at the shadow, right, it's often these, we look at our triggers, we look at our past traumas, we look at these parts of ourselves that we repress, that we shame, that we judge. And for women in particular, the 3 big things I always see that I navigated to, again, right, perfectionism, really like fearing looking dumb, fearing getting fired or canceled or laughed at or whatever your mind is telling you. Rejection, fear of rejection is a huge one, because as an entrepreneur, what is so important? Selling. What are so many women terrified to do? Oh my God, sell. Oh, I'm so salesy. I'm too much. Oh, I don't want to make people uncomfortable. It's like, then you're going to be broke if you don't get really comfortable with selling and getting quote unquote rejected. People pleasing, another huge one as women. Like, oh my God, I don't want to say something that's going to offend someone, or let me over deliver to this client, or have non-existent boundaries. And I'm a big believer we get to kind of hunt for that alchemical gold in these shadows, in these places where it's not just a pattern we see in entrepreneurship. We see it play out in our relationships, romantic relationships, friendships. And I believe what imprisons us also points to our freedom. And so when you really look at these parts of yourself, for me, that fear of being rejected that I really had coming into business, on the other side of it, like when I truly became fearless and just didn't give a shit if someone said no to me, I was unstoppable. It was like when you no longer fear rejection, you can ask for whatever you want. You can make that courageous ask. You can make it happen. Anything you desire to create in your business. If you don't fear, thumbs up. If you don't fear being rejected, you're unstoppable. Or if you no longer fear like looking stupid, looking dumb, making a mistake, like your self-expression, your visibility, and therefore your magnetism, because you're so out there in your essence, in your truest expression, is going to expand so massively.
I think that's really beautifully and eloquently said. And something that you just mentioned, is people being scared of marketing themselves, really selling themselves, selling their services. How do you help, your clients or just women in general get over the, I'm being so salesy? Am I annoying them? Am I being gross? Like, oh no, like if they want it, they'll reach out to me themselves. Like, how do you help people get over that?
Oh, that is such a good question, because I think it's so universal. It's so universal. So I like to call it playing the cool girl. So a lot of women will come in if they're a service provider. Again, I work with a lot of service providers. It's like, oh my God, but I want people to think I'm booked for like 2 years and there's a waiting list. And oh my God, if I invite someone to work with me, or invite someone onto a discovery call, or invite someone to my masterclass, isn't that desperate? Isn't that like putting pressure on them? And it's really looking at, okay, where are you getting in your own goddamn way? Where are you making this about you? This isn't about you. This is actually about you delivering your magic, your gifts, your medicine to the world. And how dare you make it about you and your ego's fear of being rejected? Okay. Like it's just, I view selling as it's just extending bridges. I view selling as service. It's like, hey, I am obsessed with the work I do, whether you're a coach or an agency owner or a consultant, whatever it is, I'm obsessed with the work I do. I could change your freaking life. Okay. And let me invite you into the opportunity to have that experience. Let me extend a bridge, but you get to be unattached to when that human decides to walk over the bridge. It's not about you. You've extended the bridge. Okay. And you have another conversation, extend another bridge, extend another bridge. And then you just have all these bridges extended. And because you have planted, also it's like you can view selling as planting seeds, right? You get to be really unattached from when that seed sprouts, from when it blossoms. So it's like, hey, I planted a seed. I invited someone into my world, or I made a post on Instagram where I launched this offer. We don't know when that's going to blossom. So I really like to view selling too as high intention, low attachment. And it's like, how can you not make it about you and instead be about being so anchored into the power your work has to change someone's life or someone's business, and get out of your own freaking way and stop making it about you?
That's
I like
awesome.
that.
I'm
That's
definitely
really
gonna
great.
I'm definitely gonna use that, because that's something that I still struggle with as well. Just like needing, struggling to sell and feeling like I'm being pushy, and having a hard time making the ask and wanting to plant those seeds and build those bridges. So I love that advice. I want to get back, Emily, to a little bit more about your journey and your origin story, because we know that you came from a really big agency. It was very soul sucking for you. And then you had this experience of working at this really exciting startup, and that gave you a taste of entrepreneurship. And then you made the leap to creating Honor Your Wild. And
Yes.
I cannot imagine that that was an easy journey for you. I'm sure that you had to face your shadow self every day. So tell us a little bit more about what that journey looked like, what gave you the push, and what you learned in that experience.
Oh, I love talking about this, taking a trip down memory lane. It's been almost 4.5 years, or maybe over 4.5 years now. But
Wow.
I reached this moment. I think I was 30. I'm 36 now, but I was 30 and I got promoted to director of growth. And that was the title I'd always wanted. I wanted to be a director, right? And I was managing a team of like 20 people. So I was like, whoa, I've made it, baby. I'm like, called my dad. I'm like, Dad, I'm managing this many people. I'm making this much money. Like, my dad was like, cool, great. I'm so proud of you. And it was totally in that moment when I, again, realized so much in my adult life had been trying to make my dad proud. And in that moment, I realized my dad doesn't care. He just wants you to be happy. And that was when it started to unravel. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I running up this mountain? Why have I been running towards this dream of being a director of marketing? Is that even my dream? Whose dream is this? And my dad is the most amazing man. And just really seeing in that moment, he didn't care. As long as I had a roof over my head, he was fine with whatever I was doing. And it was just also getting to that top of the proverbial mountain at a relatively young age and being like, the view up here sucks. Like, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So in a few more years, I'll be a VP and like make slightly more money and manage more people. Like, this isn't what I know. Like, my soul was such a no to it. So I had this unique opportunity to leave the startup on really good, really beautiful terms. Did that. And did not realize, y'all, that 2 weeks later, COVID would be hitting. So I thought,
oh, wow.
I thought I was going to become an entrepreneur and like go skip on beaches in Bali and be like a digital nomad. So I was like going to be going to Southeast Asia.
Right.
But then 2 weeks later, COVID hit. So I'm in my parents' basement. So then I'm like, shit, this isn't really that fun. And at the time, I didn't leave my 9 to 5 to coach. I didn't really know that's what I wanted yet. I was doing marketing consulting. And in that kind of space of quarantine, right? Like many humans on this planet, I had a little bit of an existential crisis with all that time on my hands. All that time to sit and think. And I was like, okay, well, this consulting thing it feels a little better than working for the man, but I'm still working for someone. It's still the same work. It's still not lighting me up. So I was like, this isn't quite it, is it? And this is a true story, but during quarantine at my parents' house, I found an old journal in my parents' basement from when I was like 21 years old or 20, something like that. And 21-year-old Emily had written a bucket list of things she wanted to do with her life. And on that list was like, be a life coach. And I went, interesting. What the hell did 21-year-old Emily know about coaching? But I think I had seen like a OG like Gabby Bernstein or one of those and was just like, whatever she's doing, I want to do that. But of course I had like thrown that dream out the window because it was like, gotta be serious, gotta climb the ladder. And so it was like, interesting. What if I were to pursue that? Because actually what I always loved in my 9 to 5 was managing my team, which in retrospect, I was coaching them. I was crossing all of the boundaries as a manager. I was getting all involved in their personal lives, personal goals, work goals, whatever. I'm here for all of it. So then was like, well, let's just see what it's like, and applied to a coaching certification program just to kind of fuck around and find out, and fell in love with it. And launched my business while I was in school.
I love this idea of fucking around and finding out because
it is medicine as an entrepreneur.
It is. And giving yourself the space and the opportunity to do that is so important. I think making that jump from corporate to entrepreneurship, it comes with so much uncertainty, and it's so much easier to stay in the safe, like 9 to 5 stable paycheck. But I can speak for both Rach and I when I say that, being willing to take that leap and follow your heart and your instincts and intuition, it never really leads you astray. And that's where the beauty and the bounty is.
And also, just to add, I mean, me and Ebbs live our life with just fucking around and finding out, and it's been working great so far. And I don't think we're ever going to change that. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's such a valuable skill as an entrepreneur, because so many humans come into entrepreneurship wanting the roadmap perfectly laid out of exactly how they're going to get from A to B to C to D. And yet the reality is things never go according to plan, right? And if you sit and try waiting for it to be, I mean, you girls know, if you sit and waiting for the plan to be perfectly mapped out before you move, you will be waiting the rest of your life. And to me, your success as an your success as an entrepreneur is tangentially related to how dirty you can get your hands and how messy you can get. Because it's just like with every, again, fuck up, quote unquote, or mistake or misstep, you learn, you pivot, you grow, you expand. And so it's just like, instead of trying to be like, I view your business as your art. And a lot of people are trying to stencil the outline before they start painting. And I'm like, girl, just like get on that canvas and start putting strokes on the canvas. Give yourself something to respond to. Give yourself information to move with, to act with, to respond to, versus trying to figure it out in your head and lingering and getting ready to get ready. Because I see that a lot with entrepreneurs. They're like, oh, well, I'll launch my business when Mercury's not in the microwave and when I have this much money saved and when it's not election season and when my parents aren't fighting or when my boss isn't being an asshole anymore, then I'll launch my business. Or if you're an established entrepreneur, I'll do that next thing. Yeah, when my energy's more aligned, all that. And it's just you got to move.
So true. Yeah, you do. And you have to move yesterday because you have to take the leap of faith. And you can't just keep waiting around. Because if you wait around, you're never going to fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
And
it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. Yeah. When I see women with big dreams that are just sitting and waiting for the perfect time. And they are waiting for years.
Yeah. And I hope that kind of, listening to this podcast, the baddies feel inspired just to take that leap of faith, because what's the worst that can happen? But I just want to talk more about the work that you're doing, like you're incorporating some really beautiful elements, very unique to what Ebbs and I do. We're kind of more in that traditional corporate space, but you're incorporating astrology, human design, which I love human design. I'm a manifestor. And so I'm really into human design. I'm a manifestor. And the psychedelic ceremonies.
I'm a projector.
How do you incorporate it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ebbs, what are you?
Ebony, what are you?
Generator. I'm a generator.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. What do they say about projectors?
We have vision. We see things very differently than a lot of the world. And apparently we make excellent guides and coaches. So here I am.
Well, there you go. Yeah. I mean, they say manifestors are just little fire starters, and that couldn't be more accurate for me. I'm like, should we just stop the podcast? That is, should we just do this little lunch thing? Yeah. Yeah, yes. That's exactly how it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Raj was literally in the shower and was like, I want to do a podcast with Ebbs. And then she just sent me a voice note on WhatsApp. She's like, we need to start a podcast. And I was like, okay, sign me up. And here we are.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. That is so manifestor of you. You guys are just like creating those movements, those ideas. Yes. You manifest these things. Projectors, we tend execute. Generators, Ebony, like amazing energy levels, like just you guys deliver like bad bitches, just always producing the most beautiful work. Projectors like me, we're less suited for like we have a lower sacral battery, so we're not necessarily meant to be like working all the freaking time like a 9 to 5. Like when I look back at my 9 to 5 days, I'm like, no wonder I was so burnt out. And I was just working, like 12-hour days. And I'm like, I didn't know I was a projector and that was not in alignment with my unique energy.
Amazing.
Amazing. But tell us how do you incorporate it all? Do you ask people, hey, what's your moon and sun and, sign, and you kind of just tell them what to do? I mean, I love this. For anyone that knows me, I'm like really into it. I love it.
Well, Yeah. So my work is very, what's the word? Multifaceted. Okay. So first of all, I love strategy. I'm like the queen of strategy and structure. I do a lot of really deep marketing work with my clients on their messaging, on their sales strategy, on their social media strategy. But I'm also like very woo woo. And so I'd love to bring in things like human design because you get to, and energetics and the laws of the universe and rules of the subconscious mind. Because I also work with a lot of very spiritual entrepreneurs who are very into that stuff. And it's just, it's such a powerful perspective to take when you build your business. Because I think when you're so heavy only in the strategy, or if you're so heavy only in the energetics, you're going to be kind of limping along a little bit because strategy to me is incomplete without accounting for both. And so when you really look at human design, so when I start with the client, I'm not like a certified human design reader. That is something I want to be doing. Probably next year, I'm going to get my certification, but we'll pull their chart and we'll look at things like their unique genius, their gifts, how their energy moves, what their purpose is, how they're meant to express themselves, how they're meant to make decisions. And there's so many interesting ways where you can integrate that into your marketing, where you can integrate that into how you run your business, where you can integrate that if you're like not clear what your mission is as an entrepreneur, you can look in your human design to really see that. Like I also, I don't know if you're familiar with the gene keys. I love the gene keys. There's a lot of overlap between the gene keys, and human design. So like, for example,
but it just goes deeper.
Yeah, my greatest gift in the gene keys in human design is gate 49, revolution. Okay. So it's like I see like my purpose is revolution. Okay. So like when I look at how I market my work, I'm not just saying, hey, let's market your business and follow this 3-step process. It's like, no, we're here to shake shit up. Like this is a completely like different way of marketing your business. And it's just really, I like to infuse that energy of like revolution, of rebellion, of breaking the rules into how I run my business, into the programs I run, into how I coach my clients, into how I market myself. And so I like to look at clients too, like, what is your gift? What are you here for? What are you here to bring forward? And like even with your energy levels, looking at that and the different energy type you are in human design, it can be such a permission slip. It's again, for me as a projector and feeling so burnt out my whole 9 to 5, and then really seeing I have my energy works a little different. I'm not meant to be like 12 hours a day. And once I really saw that in my human design, it was such a permission slip because it was like, hey, I get more done in 2 hours than most people will get done in 12. So if I can give myself that spaciousness to rest and rejuvenate and not always be putting that pressure on myself to be working all the time and keeping up with the generators of the world, like I can accomplish so much more if I prioritize rest and then go lady balls to the wall for 2 hours.
Lady balls to the walls. Oh, I love that. That's the only way I'm going to use the phrase now, actually. I think that's wonderful. I love that. You know,
you got to be lady balls to the wall, okay?
Absolutely. You said it. No, I can relate to that. I mean, I work a lot and I love what I do and I love the businesses I run and you bring me a lot of joy. But there are just times where I'm just flagging and I'll be sitting there for like 4 hours and I'm like, okay, I just need to go. I need to just go lay down. I need to go for a walk. I need to eat some ice cream. I need to do something. And I'll come back. I'll put a half an hour timer on my phone, half an hour, and I'll get everything done in those like 30 minutes. And I'm like, wow. I just needed to unplug and then sit back down and do it. And I think that's giving yourself permission to do that. Super important.
Yeah. I mean, I believe rest is very productive. I believe pleasure is productive. I believe feeling good and pouring into your own cup is incredibly productive. Because I, again, come from the 9 to 5 where it's just your self-worth is really defined by your output. And you're like, the more I do, the more I accomplish, the more I produce, the better I will feel. But what I've learned to be true is the better I feel, the more I end up doing. Like the more I prioritize pleasure and aliveness and joy, the higher my frequency is, the more I'm in my creativity, the more I'm in my intuition, the more I'm able to access solutions. And so when I'm in that energy, I can get like I can like knock it out in 30 minutes, baby.
Yeah. I totally feel the same way, Emily. And I know that the days when I've made time to move my body or exercise, I'm so much more focused. My mood is so much better. And, I'm nearly 8 months pregnant and running this company, and I feel so incredible. Yeah, because I'm prioritizing joy and taking care of myself physically. And I think we're so tempted just to run ourselves ragged.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we hit burnout. That's when we become really like uninspired. And you have to operate from a place of health and joy. So I love that you share that message and really embody your human design as a projector. I want to ask you, because I know that you are expert when it comes to helping women communicate and market themselves. And even just seeing how you show up on this podcast with so much energy and spirit really is so awesome for me as a communicator as well. And I'd love to dive into what are some of the common marketing mistakes or communication mistakes that you see female founders struggling through. Okay, so they've got the business, it's up and off the ground, but maybe they're having a really hard time communicating their value or their services or what they do. What are your top tips and advice for women who are in that sticky part where they don't know how to market and communicate around themselves?
Yeah, I love that question. And just transparently, the two biggest issues I see across female entrepreneurs, again, I work with a lot of service providers, but I think this is pretty universal. Two biggest things, and we've covered this already. You're not selling enough. You're assuming that people, because you made a post on LinkedIn once, or you posted a few
Right.
times on Instagram. You're like, people remember. No, they don't.
Nope.
No.
So this is the thing, y'all. Nobody remembers that nobody cares until they do.
Yeah.
Until they have seen your message enough times, until it has hit them at the right moment for them. And when you have really tweaked your messaging to the point where it actually is finally landing for them and finally speaking to them. Because what I see is, again, this thing of being the cool girl, not wanting to be salesy, not wanting to be too much, and you're not selling enough. You're not you're not even marketing and showing up enough online. You're getting wrapped up in people didn't DM me for the link, or they didn't book a call, or they didn't buy. Oh my God, let me retreat. When really it's just like, that's when you get to expand and keep going and get curious about what could I tweak? What could I test? What could I polish? And look, that's hard to do, right? Because we feel like, oh my God, no one wants me. But so many entrepreneurs give up when they have barely scratched the surface of what's possible in terms of marketing their business. Like, I think consumer psychology is showing us some crazy statistic in 2024, which is the volume of information we're being hit with, the volume of marketing. People need to see things like 15 to 20 times on average to buy in 2024. And so if you're like selling, quote unquote, if you're selling once a week or every other week, you do the math on how long your buyer journey is going to be. So it's like, if you can get in the practice of consistency, I mean, that's where the magic happens. And then the second biggest thing is, and this really applies to the work I do with coaches and healers and service providers, but your messaging is off. You're not hyper clear on who you're speaking to, on who your dream client is. And so you can also think of that as your brand positioning, but everyone gets this wrong. And I got it wrong for years. I'm calling my own self out here. It's just being very clear on exactly who you're for, exactly who your dream client is, exactly what they want, exactly where they're stuck, and speaking only to them. Because what people do is they don't want to leave people out, right? They want to be for everyone, and we don't want to leave out potential clients. And then you end up speaking to no one. We've all heard that, right? That when you're trying to be for everyone, you're for no one. But it's just,
You're for no one.
So it's so relevant in this, again, this crowded market where people are looking for specialists, not generalists. And so we're looking for someone who's really a master of their domain. Like when you have like a lady problem down there, you don't go to the GP, your general practitioner. You go to your gyno. You want someone that knows their shit, right? And the same applies for your business, especially if you're a service provider. Like when I started my business, my niche was this, ladies. It was, I help high achieving boss babes feel more freedom and aliveness, hence honor your wild. And people were like, cute. What does that mean? So it's really to just land the spaceship there. It's you're not selling enough, and get into a practice of consistency with selling and doing the shadow work to keep you from collapsing and stopping with your consistency. And really look at your brand positioning and your messaging and your niching, because often the reason why businesses aren't moving and taking off is because it's not clear who your work is for, and or your product is for. You're speaking to far too many people, and therefore no one really is resonating with it.
Yeah. And I know that showing up gets easier the more you do it as well. To go back to like, you know, thinking that you're showing up online too much, like you really cannot show up enough.
It's
true.
so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
It's so true. I mean, just before we were having this meeting, I mean, we were having this interview, I was like messaging Ebbs and our podcast producer, and she's literally one of my favorite people. She's amazing. I was like, do we want to do this every week, or should we be doing it every other week? Should we, leave the audience wanting more? But it's really like, no, we need to be consistent, right? We need to do this every week, and that's what we're doing.
Oh, I love that. I'm celebrating that. It's just consistency is what creates the result. And it's going to the spiritual gym and continuing to push at your edges and meet your edges when it comes to things like selling or visibility. Because again, going back to this idea of like, I don't want to annoy people, or I've said this already. I've already marketed this once. I sent one email. It's like literally no, because we're all obsessed with ourselves. So we have the biggest egos. So many of us, we're like, we're remembering everything we said. We're like, I said that 2 months ago. I can't say that again online. I can't send that email again. And it's like, no one remembers what you said. Say it again. Say it louder. Say it prouder. So much of marketing is and messaging. Powerful messaging is repetition. It's saying the same thing a million different ways. And a lot of people, when it comes to marketing and messaging, they trip up because they think they have to say something brand new and reinvent the wheel every day. That's actually terrible messaging, because then you're all over the place, because then you're not really a stand for anything. You're just kind of like, let me talk about this. Let me talk about that. Like when you think about your brand, you want to have some really core pillars and become known for those, and just speak about them over and over again, those like 2 to 3 things in a million different ways, versus like racking your brain. What should I say today? Let me come up with some grand new idea. No, it's actually not about that.
I love that. And really doubling down on what resonates with people as well. Like if you're posting on social, showing up online, having a look at those like, top performing posts, those outliers, and really getting clear on what people want to hear from you and what resonates with them, and just keep saying the same thing over and over again. And hearing you talk about, having a message and just hitting it again and again. I think about, brands like Nike who have been saying, just do it. And that's all they say. And they've been saying that for decades, and they're a $1 billion brand. So just do it.
Oh, girl, I love how you brought Nike in. They're not going like, oh my God, I'm being repetitive. Am I annoying people? No, they're freaking going for it because they know the power of repetition and consistency. And when we think about marketing to the subconscious mind of your dream client, your consumer, your client, subconscious mind really needs repetition too. Like what you girls are woo, right? You probably do affirmations, and it's like we need to repeat things to kind of break through into the psyche of our human.
Yeah,
very true.
So you've had your business on Your Wild for a couple of years now, 4.5 years. Congrats. That's amazing. I know that most businesses fail within their first year or two. So you are already an outlier. You're already in the top 1%. You've done it. I would love to hear a little bit more about, what you've learned over the last 4 years from your entrepreneurial journey, from, trying to find your niche, being in the wilderness a little bit, dealing with your shadow self, to women who are looking up to you and like, how has she done it? What are the top pieces of advice that you can share from that 4-year journey? What are the biggest lessons that you have learned in that time that you can impart with other baddies and female entrepreneurs out there?
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think this is just even advice I would give to myself when I first started, is just really brace yourself for a roller coaster. I think something that is very damaging actually about how entrepreneurship is often portrayed online is that it's this kind of cakewalk. It's like, oh my God, unlimited income and 4-hour work weeks, and you're going to be a millionaire, and just it. And you get so
I'm not working 4 hours a week.
Laugh harder, right? And it's just, there's a lot of marketing out there around how it's going to be effortless and easy. And so I see a lot of women fail because they come in thinking, oh my God, I'm going to make so much money my first year, 6-figure year. And then when the reality of how hard it is to climb to the top of the mountain, when that hits, people freak out. They say, I see it happen with clients all the time. They're like, well, what's wrong with me? Why is it so hard? I see all these entrepreneurs posting about how easy it is, how effortless it is, how much money they're making. And so I just think be really real with yourself that this is a climb. Like, you're climbing up Mount Everest in many ways. And you got to really, the advice I would give is, instead of falling in love with the top of the mountain of like the income or the number of clients, like, you have to fall in love with the climb and the process and the woman you're becoming. Because if you're just in it
100%.
for the top of the mountain, you're going to like give up right away, because it's just, you have to fall in love with the process. And like when my business really popped off 2 years ago, you know, my ego was like, whoa, oh my God, I'm making all this money. Wow. But it was a very fleeting sugar rush. It actually didn't fulfill me as much as really reflecting on my journey and the existential crises, the shadows, the shitstorms that I've navigated, and the woman I've become in the face of that, and really falling in love with that. And then secondly, I would say you have to anchor into your vision and your why, like why you're doing this. Again, if you're doing this just for the money, it's going to be challenging to stay in it when the reality of how hard and vast that climb is hits. And so I always invite my clients into this, and you can do it in your own spiritual practice, whether it's in a visualization or a hypnosis or journaling or with your coach. But really, what is that future vision you're calling in? And what is the impact you're here to make on the planet? Like when I have bad days, because I have bad days where I'm like, this is kicking my booty today. I'll sit down and I'll be like, Emily, why are you doing this? Why did God, source, universe put you here on this planet? And I'll remind myself of that in my journal, in my meditation, because it has to be bigger than, if it's all about you, that can also get kind of lonely and depressing.
Yeah,
For sure.
What is your vision, Emily? I'm curious, when you're asking yourself and you're having that internal conversation, what is your response?
Well, this actually came through in a plant medicine ceremony a few years ago. So I have, real talk, girlfriend. So I view that my piece in the world is helping to, bear with me, right? Is birthing this like kind of new paradigm. I see what's happening right now is a lot of humans are wanting to break free from the matrix, quote unquote, and kind of leave behind the oppressive structures of 9-to-5s and corporations. And so I view my role as helping to facilitate that and walking alongside humans as they make that leap, because it is a very scary, as we've talked about, triggering, confronting change to make when you go from that safety of working for a company to the unknown of your own business. It's going to be very hard. Again, your reptilian brain is going to freak the fuck out, be like, we got to run back. And so I'm kind of there to walk alongside you and hold the torch in the darkness. Like the vision I had in the plant medicine ceremony was like Noah's Ark. We're all boarding Noah's Ark. And I'm like holding the torch as we walk on to board Noah's Ark and set sail for a brave new world. So as woo-woo as it sounds, like that's what I anchor into. I view a lot of healers and light workers and heart-led service providers as here to build that new world, to build that new paradigm. It's again, it's really challenging. And so I think we get to be supported. I think we get to have a team. I think it takes a village to raise a woman, to raise a business. And I have a big support team. I have a coach. I have an energy worker. I have an astrologist. It's just, we get to ask for support.
That's beautiful.
I
Thank
think
you for
that's
sharing.
wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. And I hope that that allows people, the baddies that are listening to this to think about like, what's my vision and what am I really anchoring in on so they can connect to that.
I think, is there anything, Emily, that we haven't asked you that you want to share from your journey or from your work? Any last wisdom that you have for women who are walking this journey?
I mean, honestly, y'all, you asked like the best question. So I feel very complete, but I would
That's awesome.
I would leave with just, if any woman is kind of on the fence of, do I make that move? Do I launch the business? Do I leave the company? Do I start this new project in my business? It's just my we've talked about this already, but it's just as you said, get started yesterday. Get moving.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as the perfect time, and the longer you linger in what ifs and let me wait for things to be more aligned, for my energy to be more aligned, for the planets to be more aligned, for the economy to be better, the more you will atrophy, and the harder movement will become. So fuck around and find out, y'all.
Emily, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your energy. I'm feeling so inspired after this conversation. I'm sure so many of our listeners are. And if anyone wants to work with you or access your wisdom on a regular basis, where can they find you?
Oh, Instagram, where I spend way too much time.
Don't we all?
Yes, I'm working on my phone boundaries, but I'm Emily Oriana Todd on Instagram. I would love to connect with you and hear your biggest takeaway from today, or if you'd love to explore working together, shoot me a DM. I'm on there again.
Wonderful.
Way too much.
Yeah. We'll have all the links in the show notes, baddies. So don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and reach out to Emily. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.